وسهلا ومرحبا. Welcome to the Habibis podcast. 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea. I'm your host, Fawzi Musman.
And I'm Osama Dorias.
And I'm Rami Ismail.
Oh, it's been a week, hasn't it?
It's been a week.
Yes.
It really has been.
Another week in the books. Put a doily on that week, huh?
You're getting ahead of yourself here.
I mean, I'll be honest. It's the first week in a while where I felt happy about the game's offering, because it's been a while. Like I've mostly been replaying stuff, and I've been playing Burnout Paradise because that was available, and I just haven't seen a lot of games that I really wanted to play.
But it sounds like you got a new game for us this week, Rami.
I have a new game for you. Like this is as smooth a transition as Osama can make it.
Masterfully done. I'm so proud.
I'm learning from the best.
The game is called Outriders, and it's a game by People Can Fly, and it is. So if you imagine Destiny, you know, like the relatively tight third, like sort of action shooter game with space magic, but you remove all considerations for balance, and you make it a pretty straightforward RPG. And then you decide that the aesthetic of the game is you are the Predator from Alien vs. Predator.
That's actually a pretty good way of putting it.
They kind of get this game. So it's this game in which on a foreign planet, some humans have gained superpowers, and giant wars have broken out, and you basically just need to wreck stuff for reasons. The story is pretty meh so far. All the acting is either super overacted or super cliche. It super hits all the notes you want for a game like this. It's like kind of pulpy, it's kind of cliche, but God, is the aesthetic of being the monster, is that fun. Like you walk into a room, and like the class I'm playing is called the Devastator. It's this hyper aggressive class. So I get into a room, I start floating, and then just basically fly dash across the entire battlefield and just pulverize a sniper into like a cloud of blood. And I'm suddenly behind the enemies, like pull up a shield of stones so that I'm not getting hurt by anything as I run at them. And every class has its own way of healing. And every way of healing comes from doing something with the mechanics. And in most cases, that mechanic is killing something or hurting something. So I'm just running into this cloud, just this room of enemies, and then I come out of the battle with more health than I started.
Yeah.
That's the feeling of the game. And everything in the game just seems to be balanced towards fun.
And it's a single-player game mostly, or are you playing multiplayer?
So I'm playing a single player, but you can make small parties of. That's why I sort of refer to Destiny. They're using similar. In many ways, they're using similar spaces and similar design language in a lot of what they're doing. You can kind of place it between Monster Hunter, if you've been playing that, and Outriders. It's not quite as online as a Destiny is. It's not quite as clunky as most Monster Hunters were. It's really fun. Yeah. It's just it's not a smart game. It's not pretending to be a smart game. I can't even tell you whether it's a good game, but I can tell you it's a fun game.
Which in my book makes it a good game, because that's why we play our games. Actually, I thought there was a little bit of Gears of War thrown in there as well, just a bit at the beginning.
My class really doesn't. I don't know what class are you playing.
I don't remember the name of the class, but it's the tanky one that heals when you kill people.
Oh yeah, you're the same as me, Devastator.
The Devastator. Okay, yeah, that feels very Doomish, and we should play together, even though we're the same class. It's fine; it'll work out. But
Fauci, you should come join us and also be a Devastator. So we have
Sounds good.
3 Doom guys walking onto the battlefield with their Shay.
So what I think, like I liked everything you said. I agree with. The overacting was, oh my god, there's one character in particular right at the beginning I just wanted to slap. Like I was like, oh, stop it, come on.
Right.
But what I loved was the beginning, the patience of the game.
Right.
Like the first hour of the game, it was just to me, I think perfectly paced. Just the right amount of I'm introducing you to the story piece. There's this much. Here's a tutorial of how you do a thing. I'm getting you used to it. And then I'm going to like subvert that, like just enough. Like there are a lot of games that require different levels of story. Like Doom, it's like here's a gun, go shoot, and that perfectly works for Doom. And other games are like exposition for days before you get to even move around, which like completely turns me off. In general, this game, I feel at the beginning, I would like the first hour whizzed through. Like I was actually interested in.
I mean,
yeah.
It really shows what, like, I think the clever thing is it really shows what you're fighting for and what you're fighting against.
Yes.
Which is just so cleverly done.
Agreed. Like I thought that was a strong start.
Right.
Looking at screenshots of like the game as you guys are talking about it, it feels a lot like a Destiny game, a more gory Destiny game that is running on Unreal Engine. It's the vibes that I get like watching.
Right. And honestly, you're not that far off.
Yeah.
But the honest truth is that in terms of gameplay, Destiny is very much like squad based, old school, mobility based first person shooter, right? And this is not a first person shooter.
Yeah.
And the guns are not bad. Like genuinely, I like shooting the guns is fine. The HUD is honestly really cleverly done. I love the kill confirm that you get with your weapons, a little red skull in the middle.
That's why I said there's a little bit of Gears of War in it, because depending on at the beginning, especially, it's a cover shooter a little bit, but you're rewarded for moving closer to the enemy, and it has like different classes that allow you to be at different distances. It had and it's third person, so it had a little bit of a Gears of War thrown in there in a good way. Like I'm not taking away from it. So I think it does offer something new gameplay wise.
And it's People Can Fly, right? So it's yet another Polish studio.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I like a lot of the games that People Can Fly does. I will say that Outriders feels like them a lot. It's like the hyper aggressive, but it's just sort of like, poured into an RPG shell this time. It just, I can't tell whether it's good because I think a lot of these kind of games is about the balance and the progression, not necessarily the balance of like, making sure all the weapons are balanced, but like the incoming stuff that happens, the pacing, the types of improvements your character sees versus the enemies. But so far what I've liked is that they really seem to focus on fun, and I fought a few bosses and they were okay, but overall the game really shines when it's just you like walking into a battlefield and going "Salam alaikum" and just like wrecking everything in like 5.5 seconds, and then just going like "and alaikum assalam" and just if there was an Arab character in the game, that would absolutely be the two voice lines that your character would say walking into it, because that's exactly the cliche level of writing that they're going for.
It's good to see that studios' previous experiences kind of shining through into what you guys are describing, because like Osama was really like mentioning how it reminds him of Gears, and they worked on a couple of Gears games in the past,
Wait, did they?
Yeah, I think they worked on Judgment, if I remember correctly. They co-developed that with Epic Games, and they ported I think the original back in the day.
Right.
Okay, I didn't even know that. I know they worked on Bulletstorm. That's what I remember them.
Yeah,
from.
Definitely Bulletstorm for sure. Yeah. But they did some co-development with Epic Games. They helped out with some Fortnite stuff as well.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. You could actually I felt the Gears of War influence in it. It wasn't like I'm not playing Gears of War now. It wasn't that extreme, but I just felt enough of it to be like, okay, this is familiar in that good way, right?
It's the most fascinating things about game development for me is that we carry our experience through, right? Like you make the game, and then it's part of your craft, and it shows up in the oddest ways when you make another game.
I mean, it's even before you start making games. Like in my travels, one of the things that I've always loved is sort of like recognizing the fingerprint of creators. But you also recognize that in people's like first works or early works. I always use the example. One of the examples I really love is just the war games in general.
Yeah,
where most of the war games have been very Western or American based, which means that the cultural ideal of war is sort of a thing that you win.
Yeah.
But then a Polish studio goes and makes This War of Mine, Because Poland is a studio where war happens, or a German studio goes and makes Spec Ops: The Line, which is a game about the trauma and hurt of fighting a war, and not just fighting a war that you're losing, but fighting a war where you're the aggressor.
Yeah.
And you're just seeing that culture. The same way we talked about Mahdi Bahrami the other week, about Farj and Agari. He's not trying to make games about Islam or about
reality.
Iran. Yeah. It's just what he lives, right?
Yes, exactly.
South Africa make these very biting, sarcastic games.
Tongue-in-cheek
the Dutch
humor.
Yeah, tongue-in-cheek. The Dutch make very minimalist games. I like that you can tell a lot about a culture just from the sort of games that come out of there.
Yeah,
I think Poland as a country is relatively irreverent, and you can see that all the way from the small indies, Sosisowski doing a game like McPixel, all the way to People Can Fly, doing a Bulletstorm. But yeah, that experience also grows. I mean, you will always recognize a game from me from certain field things, because after working with JW for 10 years,
screen shake
at Lambert, right? Like it's really hard for me to sort of like not think of games from that perspective. I'll have to intentionally try not to think about like, okay, how do we balance the juice on every interaction from the very first moment?
It's a topic of I talk about this a lot in like lectures and in talks that I do, is that what we do defines our creativity. So like we can't help but like have a little bit of us in every creative work we do. And the more we put ourselves into our work, the more original and vibrant, and the more people can relate to it as well.
Right. I actually was going to give a keynote at the GDC that got canceled because of COVID, specifically about devs and the personal things that they put in their games. And I'm still sad that talk never happened, because it was such a powerful one. You really like this is a job for us, true, and this is a way that we provide for ourselves and our families. But for a lot of us, I would say even most of us, we can't help but make it personal. There's so many like little stories and details that we've played in our favorite games that we maybe might seem, I wouldn't say even out of place, but might seem notable. And then you don't know what the background story is, and when you find out, your mind is blown because you can't help it.
I frequently have things where people point out certain influences that we've had, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I think we totally should be, because like this is like games, as any other art form, is a method of self-expression, right? And
absolutely,
the more the creators put themselves in the artwork, the more they provide windows into perhaps a world you've never seen before, or like an ideology you don't have access.
I'd like to share my favorite example from that, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So Richard Flanagan made a game called Fract, which was like a rhythm type based game. It has a beat that you hear pretty much throughout the beginning of the game, right? A thumping beat. That is actually the heartbeat of his unborn child that he actually recorded and put, and it powers the entire world that he created. It's like I get goosebumps when I think about it, because I played that game and I had no idea that was it. So imagine that, but across so many different games where people are just putting something of themselves, of their families, of their experiences. It's like, this is art.
The example I usually give in my class is that when Miyamoto was a kid, he used to run around the streets of Kyoto, and he used to, there's the drain pipes at the sides of buildings. He used to look down the drain pipe, and he would imagine that if he would go into it, he would come out at another world.
Wow.
And that's like, how the green pipes ended up coming up in Mario. And you go like, it's just a green pipe, and you go into it and you go into another world. And that comes from something so deeply personal to Miyamoto himself in his life.
Wow, I love it.
Much of his creations come from his childhood and like his own sense of self, which is why like he was such an original of the time, because he managed to convey a lot of the things that are personal to him into video games in a time where like people were just trying to translate movies into video games.
That's it, right? Like they had already picked an inspiration, and the inspiration was, it was not insincere, but it was derivative rather than personal.
It's a difference between being aspirational and inspirational, right? Like they're aspiring to be the movies, while he was like, inspiring other people to make games.
It's honestly surprisingly hard. Like one of the things I've been doing over the past 10 years is I've been traveling around the world, meeting with communities around the world, and I wrote this blog post in 2015 called the 6 Stages of Community Development. And it's about how communities grow from having just a single or a few developers that don't know each other to a community that is like known worldwide, that attracts talent, attracts speakers, attracts like industry events, right? And one of the things I noticed is that in all the communities that I went to, if they were before the part where they had a success, right, a successful studio, that usually the focus of the community would be on imitating successful stuff because they hadn't proven yet.
They're learning.
Right. They're learning and they haven't proven to themselves yet that there is more, right? Like they're usually dealing with like convincing their parents that it's a real job. They're
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. They're dealing with their own confidence. They're dealing with money. They're dealing with resources, with all of those things just not being available. So they try to imitate what is successful. And I always tell them like, listen, you can try that, but you have to recognize that if you imitate successful games, you're walking into a market that you have no advantage in.
Yep.
Right. Because the people making those games are already good at making those games. So if you want to be successful, what you really have to focus in and what is different about you and your culture and your history and your music and your life that you can somehow mold into a game. And then usually my favorite thing about that is usually when it happens, when a game becomes a hit, it's usually something that is a little more personal, right? A little more of a subversion of what exists already. But then the other studios in the country or in the community will usually rebel against the people that made that. Not in like a negative way, but just in like, we're going to be like that studio, but not like that studio. So at that point, sort of the creative expression starts to come out in stronger ways. And it's just fascinating. I've seen that same pattern. That's why I wrote it down in 2015. I've seen that same pattern repeat year over year in different communities. It's people often feel like they need a permission to be creative, to be personal when they're younger designers. And I think one of the most important things as a designer you can embrace is yourself, right? Your own life, your own experiences.
You need to like accept that childlike sense of wonder within you that you've been suppressing as an adult, and just like let that out and find ways to make the more of the game about like something in you in the game, or whatever act of creation that you're doing. What is the thing? What is your perspective? What is your story? How does that come across in that piece of artwork? And it could be like a game about shooting stuff, and there's still a part within that game that is very much you.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't have to be the narrative or the subject matter. Like what your personal perspective can manifest in so many different ways when you're designing a video game, and that for me is like why I love seeing games coming out from different parts of the world, because it all of a sudden you're seeing something that like, oh, shooting a gun is completely different in this place compared to this one, because there's an entirely different perspective associated.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, so Outriders is fun.
Yeah. What a tangent.
Osama, did you play anything?
So other than a brief stint with Outriders, I'm going to go back to it because I am enjoying it. I actually watched a couple of movies, both with my kids, both family-friendly movies. One of them is the new Disney movie, Raya and the Last Dragon. I actually really enjoyed it. I'm not going to jump into it in too much detail. The only thing I wanted to say is that it was enjoyable. It was beautiful to look at. It was creative and imaginative, but it was very predictable. You can almost plan out, like as soon as the movie starts, maybe a little bit into it, you can almost plan out the next beats and what's going to happen.
What exactly is the movie about?
So it's about a world that's parallel to ours, but it's kind of like more Asian, like East Asian cultures. There's a rift that happened between a nation that was one nation, and now it got split into different nations because dragons and monsters and history. So like there's something big that happened, a calamity that happened, and the dragons are no longer there. And because the dragons aren't there to protect the people, they're at each other's throats. And then something happens, and that launches the story into being more immediate. I don't want to spoil it because it's just a story. That's all it is. So if I tell you what the story is, there's no reason to watch it. But like up until that event happens, like it's pretty imaginative and cool, and I was really into it. When that happens, I could pretty much plot out the rest of the movie and even finish some of the lines. Like they start saying something, and I'm like, they're not going to say, "Oh, they said that." Like it's very, very predictable. It's cookie cutter formulaic. The other movie wasn't that. It was very different. But that one is, I feel, more geared towards families or younger kids. I loved watching it with my daughters. They both absolutely loved it. It's called Finding Ohana. And what it is, it's a coming of age story of like a family who were like a Hawaiian family who had to move to New York when the father figure of the family died, and now they're moving back to Hawaii to take care of their grandfather, like the grandfather of the kids or the father of the mother figure. But it also has a very Goonies feel to it. There's like mystery and like magic and treasure hunting, and like I am not Hawaiian, so I can't speak to this myself. But the way from an outsider's point of view, the way they treated their culture felt really respectful and incredibly authentic. But like, again, this is not my culture, so I cannot make this claim universally. But to me, from an outsider, it really did feel like that. It felt like they didn't Americanize it, and I'm usually very sensitive to that. So I really enjoyed it. There were some moments that were absolutely delightful, especially the whenever the kids are telling the story of the pirates in the past. There's the way that they're doing that. They're saying it in their own voices, but you see the actors like mime it, and it's so well done. Every time it happened, I was smiling ear to ear. So both are, especially if you're watching with kids, both are recommendations from me. I think they're really good movies. I enjoyed them big time. If you're watching it as adults, just grain of salt. Do you usually enjoy those type of movies? If so, go for it. If you like the Goonies, like the old 1980s movie, I think this is like a better version, a more up to date, more modern version of that.
That's cool, Sam. Those are both on Disney Plus, are they?
No, Ohana, I think I saw on Netflix. Finding Ohana, yes, but Raya is on Disney Plus.
Cool.
So, what about you, Fauzi? What did you play?
Oh man, I finally got my hands on a retail PS5.
Yes,
nice.
It's about time. Yes, been awaiting greatness for such a long time. So it was the other way around for me, but greatness has arrived. To my household. I got the yeah, go ahead, Ron.
What are you playing?
So I got the digital edition, so I put that in, I plugged it, put my account in, and all of that stuff. I really I don't know why, but I really like the experience of booting up a system for the first time. And music, the setup, and I'm looking at everything. I'm taking screenshots and writing notes. Maybe not everybody does that, but I'm definitely doing that, like documenting my first time user experience and all of that. And then the PlayStation is finally set up. First of all, everybody knows how big that thing is. I knew how big that thing is. I've seen it before.
And it's still bigger than you think.
And it's still bigger than I thought.
In the context of your living room, you're like, really? I have to make room for this?
And this is like the slim one without the drive.
Oh my God.
I remember when I got mine, I just I got it out of the box and I looked at it. I'm like, this is too big. And then I realized there was a second part.
Yes.
Right, the base, and I'm like, it gets bigger.
It gets bigger.
And then I get the base out, and the base needs that screwdriver thing. It's like, no, this is not gonna happen. I'm not gonna try to find a screwdriver right now. I want to play this game.
I think I still didn't screw mine in, to be honest. I think it's just on its side, wobbly.
They need to really put those on the top of skyscrapers. They have the antenna, and on top of the antenna, they put a little light so that planes don't crash into the skyscraper. They need something like this on top of this device because goddamn is huge.
Oh my God!
I have to laugh so much. My mom has a PS5, right? and when she got it, I was like, "Mom, you just listen. It's not pretty, Right.
Yeah.
And she looked at the box and she's like, "Oh no, it looks fine." And then she opened the box and she pulled the PlayStation 5 out and she looked at it and she's like, "Oh yeah, it's ugly."
Yeah.
And
but that's the thing. The design.
I've never heard my mom say something like that about anything in her life. So that's like special.
That's the thing. Like when you look at it on its own, out of context, you can be like, "Oh, okay, this is a stylish thing," but it doesn't fit with anyone's living room ever. Like it cannot. Like I don't know. Maybe
you have
maybe
to be the robot from WALL-E.
Yeah.
in order for it to fit in with your living room.
And then even then the shape is like weird and round. And like why is it round? What like my PS5 is sitting next to my Xbox whatever it's called, Series X.
Yes, the new
one.
Too,
God, they really need
Xbox.
to fix those names. You put those two next to each other, and like the Series X is also a bit ridiculous, but it fades into my room.
It's black.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. And then the PlayStation 5 is like half black, half blue, half white. I'm like, how did you put 150% of colors in like one? Like, what is happening here?
Exactly. And you turn it on, and it beams of light as well.
Right.
It's like the most attention-seeking device I have ever seen.
Right.
I like, the Xbox Series X. It's black. You know what else is black? Is your TV. It's of every electronic appliance ever made. They're all black.
Well, since the wood panels, like since the 60s.
even the Switch, which has two giant colorful things on the left and right when it's in a dock, is less notable than PlayStation.
It's still
absolutely
subtle.
True.
Absolutely, it is so big.
But okay, I mean, okay, PlayStation 5 is ugly. We're agreed. I think everybody is agreed.
Yeah. But God,
how about the controller?
I was about to say, man, that controller is so good.
Yeah.
Right.
Like really, 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 really good. There is nothing I dislike about the controller. Like the color scheme is perfect for the controller as well, with the lights and everything. The design is so
easy
slick.
to find.
Yeah, the weight is so nice. It's USB-C finally.
Yes.
The buttons have the right click, and it's not as loud as the Series X controller. I found that to be a little bit clicky and loud.
Right.
There is one button I kind of dislike on the controller, though, and that's
PlayStation one.
The PlayStation one.
Right.
To be honest, I think the first time I opened it up, I didn't think that was a button. I thought it was a sticker, and I was looking for the home button for a bit. I forgot now because now it's like automatic muscle memory. I think I pressed it through muscle memory and not through acknowledging it. Yeah. It seems a little odd and out of place, and it doesn't even feel as good as the other buttons when you're pressing.
Right.
Yeah, it's a different construct for sure. But like the haptic feedback of the controller is very nice.
So good.
The touch screen, not a touch screen, but the touchpad feels nice. It's multi-touch this time around as well, so it's pretty cool.
Yes.
The triggers are quite nice. The motors in the triggers, man, like they're game changers.
Yes,
the haptics are so good.
Yeah.
They're honestly ridiculous. And I didn't think it would make that big of a difference, but I remember the first time I did the PlayStation 5 upgrade of Destiny, and it went from PlayStation 4 haptics to PlayStation 5 haptics. I was just like, what just happened? Like, I can feel... There's no way to go back. There really isn't.
Yeah, when I grab the PS4 controller now, it kind of feels like a toy, really, in comparison.
Yeah, it does.
Right.
So, like, I'm when I play first-person shooters, I'm a mouse and keyboard guy. That's like that's how I play. Usually, this is like making me question that. Like, I'm playing Call of Duty. I have both Call of Duty on PC and on PlayStation because I play with my brothers and sisters, and I'm not sure if I prefer the haptic feedback to the mouse and keyboard fidelity. I don't know. I can go back and forth. And this is the first time that happens. I just prefer playing first-person shooters usually with mouse and keyboard. So this is, for me, it's blasphemous. I've never said this before.
We all get smarter as we age.
It's the aimbot. It's like you just do not get the fidelity of a mouse.
You never get the same level of aim. But also, like with the controller, there's a lot of with this controller as well. Like also, like the Series X controller is pretty good. Like the next generation of controller shooting feels so much better.
Much better.
Yeah, no, the PS5, and also the one thing there's two things about that controller I'm not 100% on. The first is the battery life is just short.
I agree.
It's genuinely short. I actually bought a second one just so I can charge one and play with the other.
I should do the same.
I honestly like a full day of gaming, and like after a few hours, you're done.
Yeah. I killed my controller a couple of times. Like my PS4 one would last me a week, maybe.
Right. Yeah. Same thing. I would get the message and I'd be like, oh, I only have 4 hours left, and here I start playing and I'm like, I have 4 hours. I better get going.
Yeah,
I'm still upset that they don't offer other colors, because I'm like, I should show you a picture of all my Wiimotes that I have from the Wii. I have 8 Wiimotes. They're all different colors. It's beautiful. I love it. And here I was forced to buy a second controller of the same color. I'm like, come on, that's not how I do things.
They will change it probably. Yeah, early. They still need to make PS5s in order for them to start making controllers of different colors. So give them some space.
Just got his.
Yeah, I just got mine.
The other thing is, I thought I would really like the microphone and speaker thing.
Yeah,
like I thought I would love it, but the speaker volume is just too low to be really useful when you're playing with a larger group of people. And the idea that I have to check whether my microphone is muted in a controller, when I start playing in a multiplayer activity where I don't necessarily want to do voice chat, I don't like it.
I don't see, I'm still upset that it was on by default, because I didn't know that it was on. I don't know how many games I've played where my mic was on and I didn't know. Before I realized that the light on meant you were muted and not the other way around.
But okay, Fauzi, what have you been playing on Play? Because we're not you haven't mentioned the game you're playing yet. What did you get with your PlayStation?
So I think that one of the things I really like about the PS5 is that it just comes with Astro's Playroom.
Right.
Yes.
And that's a hell of a game, really.
It's a good game.
It's really good.
I think it's like a tech showcase, but it's a really, really fun, third person platformer. I seem to be playing a lot of these lately. I'm always been a fan of Studio Japan. Yeah. It's no surprise that they've just made an amazing game with the third person platformer. There's two things I really like about this game. I really like to see Sony celebrate their heritage.
Right.
I feel like this is something that they haven't done enough. It's been over 26 years of PlayStation.
I like that you go I don't know exactly, but I'm going to say a very specific number.
Because I wanted to think of the release of the original PlayStation. It was 1994, right. So that's actually very, very, very specific.
Right.
Yeah. So 26 years of PlayStation. There's a lot of there's a couple of generations that grew up with their devices.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of really interesting games and heritage to draw back on. But they never really unified it around a central identity in the same way Nintendo has, for example.
Right.
Nintendo have several franchises. There's Star Fox, there's Zelda, there's Mario, there's all sorts of things. But they've frequently brought in or released games that kind of celebrated all of these games together regularly, whether it's in Smash or in Mario World or in tennis or whatever. Nintendo constantly reminded you that all of these IPs are under the one umbrella, and they also form what it is Nintendo.
Yes.
Whereas Sony kind of leaned into that a bit more in the PS3 era.
Yeah.
Whereas we have our Naughty Dogs and our God of Wars and that kind of stuff, and then they start to kind of put it together. So it was really nice for me to see a game in which they celebrate this history. There's in this game, as you're running around, you see those bots filming, they're carrying a film video camera, and they're filming a famous scene from a PlayStation game.
Right.
And you're trying to guess what it is, which is always a nice touch. You're collecting several peripherals or devices. A lot of the game modes or the levels aesthetic are based on classic PlayStation eras, and there are portions in those levels when you just wander into this area and then the PlayStation 1 boot music comes out.
Yeah,
and you get hit with this nostalgia gut punch. It was very strong. So I really like that they celebrated the launch of the PlayStation 5 with this hidden gem.
Yeah, that game had no business being that good. I expected a 20-minute tech demo. I didn't expect a 4-hour long engaging game that was that. I mean, wow, where did it come from? I was so shocked.
Yeah, really good. Right. And celebrates multiple aspects of what it is PlayStation. And I sincerely hope that Sony kind of looks deeper into this and
I mean, they will. That's why they recentered Japan Studio around Asobi, right?
Yeah.
Like they know what they have. They know that they have the potential of making this sort of like a platform-defining franchise. It seems like it'll come at the cost of the rest of Japan's studio.
Well, that's the biggest shame. I think it's like more like instead of like just Asobi Games doing what they're doing, which they do really, really good stuff.
Really good. Yeah. Same.
It's more of like, multiple releases that celebrates Sony as an IP holder with these different intellectual properties that you can just show.
Right. Did you play the VR version of it?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it was VR also when the PlayStation VR came out, they also did an Astro game.
Wow.
Called what was it called? Astro's Adventure or something? I don't remember. But that was also exceptionally good.
Oh, I forgot about that one. Yeah, you're right.
Is it the rescue mission? Astrobot's rescue mission.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
That was also exceptionally good. Like true showcase of VR more than anything that was on other VR platforms, honestly.
Wow.
One of my favorite VR games to this day.
That's super, super good. So, very excited. So I finished that. I downloaded Spider-Man, and there's a bunch of stuff I'm going to be playing. So it looks like it's going to be a bunch of late nights of PS5 for me.
Right. I mean, that's good. Ramadan is coming up, so you might as well play late.
Really good timing. Good timing, right?
Absolutely.
Right. I'm really happy that I found Outriders because I already work not normal hours, right? I live on basically Canadian hours. I live in the same time zone as Osama, even though I live half the planet away. For me, I need good things to do when the entire country is asleep. So I'm just so happy that I found Outriders because Destiny is a little slow right now, and having something to play between iftar and suhoor, right, between the dinner and the breakfast, is going to be really helpful for me because it's just I can either work, which is a bad idea to just keep working, or play games. So I don't know. I'm very excited though. I love Ramadan. It's one of my favorite times of year.
Me too. I look forward to it so much. It's right on the horizon. It's coming up really quick.
The funniest, I was thinking about this the other day, and you guys remember like when the pandemic first started, there was these pictures on the internet of like nature is healing and like there's nobody in like famous districts and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I first saw that when the pandemic started, it really reminded me of any Arab city during iftar.
Yeah.
Because
that's true.
When iftar happens, it was such a it's a wonderful thing to witness. Is like when the minute you hear that Allah Akbar for the Maghrib player, everybody vanishes. The streets are empty, and if you like listen really carefully, you can hear the clicks of knives and forks on plates. Thousands of them everywhere.
I love it.
It's for those of you who are listening who don't know Ramadan, Ramadan is one of the it's actually just a month. It's the ninth month. It's September. But the Quran for Muslims says that during that month you fast, and fasting is no food, no drink, no consumption of any kind, really, from sunrise to sunset. That sustains for a month, and a Muslim month is from the new moon to the new moon. Effectively. So for almost a month.
It's also supposed to be a time where like you control your emotions and you don't get mad and you become a better person.
Osama, you try to control your emotions.
But that's the thing, because while you're hungry, it's much easier not to control your emotions, right?
Definitely a lot more yelling during Ramadan.
I have seen the exact opposite of controlling your temper from everyone. Do you know how hard it is for in country like a country like Jordan, when 70% of adults smoke.
Yeah.
Right? It's like one of the highest smoking ratios in the world. And then you tell all of these people they're not allowed to smoke until sunset. And they still have to do stuff like go to work.
Yeah.
Man, people were so angry all the time, or not have coffee. So like you get somebody who's not allowed to eat, drink in a very hot weather, mind you, but also not to have nicotine or coffee, and then kind of go about their days normally.
That's actually a funny thought, because like whenever people used to ask me, well, isn't fasting hard? Isn't fasting hard? I used to always tell them, yeah, the first 3 days are a killer, but once you get through that, you're fine. And then one year, just a few years ago, I quit drinking coffee in preparation for Ramadan. Instead of just like the day of Ramadan, I'm not drinking anymore. And those 3 miserable days happened before Ramadan. And I realized most of the misery was like the caffeine. Yeah. And like that Ramadan, the first 3 days were like a little bit harder, but that was it.
I love your advice, Osama. Basically, what we're telling our dear listeners is quit coffee and quit cigarettes. Yes, and you get to enjoy Ramadan, and that's generally good advice.
100% halal advice. I don't know, like for me, so I've never drank coffee, I've never smoked. So for me, Ramadan was always, it was funny because it shifts through the year, right? So every year, because the Muslim months are shorter than the Gregorian months, it goes forward. So when I was a kid, it was midwinter. Mm-hmm. So you would wake up and just have normal breakfast, because I'm in the Netherlands where the effects of seasons are pretty intense. And then I would go to school and not have lunch, and then go back home and just have normal dinner. So that was, I wouldn't have lunch, and I was annoyed about that. And then I got older, the days got longer. I've had 4 or 5 years where E3 now fell in the middle of Ramadan. Those were rough. Like I will say, like I love Ramadan, but part of Ramadan is community. Right. It's family. It's being together. It's the celebration. It's the culture. It's the mosques. It's I've obviously grown up as a Muslim outside of the world that celebrates Ramadan. Right. Mostly. So for me, it was always this very familial thing, but that kind of stayed in our houses, and it took me a long time to really appreciate the full celebration of it. When I would be traveling and I would come across other Muslims. For me, that is Ramadan now, right? Like I understand that there's the religious significance. I understand that there's that it's important to my faith, right, as a Muslim.
It is also a cultural event.
But yes, I think that's so important for people to really understand, is that Ramadan is not just like this very strict sort of sour, like, oh, we all have to not eat and drink from sunset to sun. Like people tell me that they're sorry, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
This is I'm happy. I'm looking forward to it.
Every year I'm like, oh, Ramadan is soon. Nice.
Yes.
That's like, the things that come with Ramadan. It's kind of like a halal Halloween, really, if you think about it. Because like there's all these decorations that come out everywhere. Like you get like what we call a fanus, which is like the lamp. That's very special traditional lamp. It's everywhere. There's decorations. When it comes to like the pop culture, pretty much all the major releases when it comes to like Middle Eastern cinema, TV shows, anything really. If you even like games, the local games, they all want to release stuff by Ramadan. Because you need to be distracted during the daytime, and after you have a giant meal in the evening, you want to sit on the couch, slowly digesting, and just receive stuff of pop culture.
Right. No, and it's that, and also just the traditions. Like from when I was a kid. So at the end of the day, at when you can eat again at iftar, my dad would watch TV in the Netherlands to watch Egypt, and there would always be this guy that would start like a few minutes before in Egypt they could eat. There would be this guy who would just go like, "Matfal iftar, idra," and just this cannon, just like,
a cannon.
And it turns out that's like, nobody quite knows where it comes from, but they would shoot a cannon to indicate that the fast is over. And that's just this old tradition. And as a kid, I was in awe of the idea that there were still people firing cannons.
Dude, because this is like, it's not an Islamic tradition, because there were no cannons around that like 1,400 years ago.
It's just this cultural thing that got added.
Dude, exactly. Like if you were starving the entire day, you want like the moment of like, go and eat to be like, you want it to come in with a bang. Like, I mean, in a race, they shoot the gun so that people run. I want to run I want to run to the kitchen table. You can like drop a nuclear bomb to just demonstrate my excitement.
You're
go and
absolutely right. But like honestly, this is the only time in the world that Arab time doesn't apply, where every single person is looking at
that is so true,
and is hyper aware of the second that they could eat. Right? This is
the funny part about that, Osama, is that like people are still not punctual about anything else other than the breakfast time.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, the other thing in morning, do you have the morning shouters in Jordan and Iraq? The Musaharati, yeah.
Musaharati, yeah, we have those. Oh, those guys. Yes, of course.
They're one of my favorite things because they just kind of go around like waking people up.
It is literally like the prehistoric version of an alarm clock.
Right.
Yes.
Because what these guys do is that like you're supposed to wake up before dawn to have food because you need to fill up, because that's the last meal you're allowed to eat until sunset.
Yeah.
So, historically, before alarm clocks and all of this, the Musaharati is the dude that will go around the neighborhood, usually with a type of drum.
Right.
And they'll be
just like a can from a trash can.
Or
and like a stick,
exactly.
Like...
An empty like milk can also works.
Right.
Any instrument that just makes banging noises.
Yeah.
And they just walk around the neighborhoods banging on those things, and then they just yell stuff that usually rhyme.
Right.
That basically says wake up and have something to eat. Also pray.
Also pray. Yeah, that's very important. Like wake up, have food, praise Allah, and then just on repeat as they walk through your neighborhood.
Speaking of prayer, one of my favorite things about Ramadan is the Maghrib prayer, like the prayer that signals that you're able to eat at the mosque, like except for last year because of COVID, and I'm a little sad about it. But every other year before, nobody, like, this is the funny thing. The month of Ramadan is the one month where people associate with hunger, but it's actually the month where no one has to go hungry. Because every Maghrib in every mosque I've ever been to, there have been a feast after that prayer for the people. Right. People take turns, and it's an honor to they bring food to serve whoever doesn't go back home and eat with their family. Either people who can't afford it or people who are there for the sense of community. There's no judgments. There's nothing. And because of the like, I'm talking specifically about like Ramadan in Canada, because of the multicultural, the array of different people who come from all over the world. One day you could be having Pakistani food, and the next day it's Indonesian, and the next day is Ethiopian, and sometimes it's a mix of all of it, because the people take turns. They're like, okay, I'll cover half the meal, and it's delightful. Like me, I have fond memories of me playing basketball with my friends, and some of them who are not Muslim, and it's time to break our fast, and just telling them, come, let's have a feast. And they're just on the sideline waiting for us to finish our prayer, and then they're joining in on the feast. And like, I have fond memories of that experience of just sharing and giving, and
and a lot of places in the Arab world. So like in Jordan, for example, you see a lot of these acts of kindness. They happen regularly, but you see them intensify during Ramadan. Like there will be many people that just have they call it sadaqah jariyah or something of the sort. Which is like basically just giving for giving's sake, which is like people hosting food feast for whoever is hungry. There's like people that will drive around the streets of in Jordan. They're carrying food boxes, and they will give it to like the traffic police who are like who have to work, or people that have to be doing work, and they give them like some water and dates and like some simple food to kind of like quench their to break their fast, basically, and quench their thirst. And the people are just doing that for free, out of the kindness of their hearts, kind of like help other people during that month.
In Egypt, you can buy those bags pre-made in supermarkets. They'll just be filled with like bottles of water and like food that doesn't go bad, and like something to eat for tonight. And you can just buy those pre-made in a supermarket if you want, and you just drive around the city, find somebody who needs it, and you will see like some folks sitting at a street corner with like 4 or 5 of those bags, and you just go like, well, this is I mean, it remains, poverty is always a bad thing, right? But and if we could structurally erase that would be great. In Ramadan, it's always lovely to see that people take that little extra effort, and they become more conscious of their privileges in life, and they become more conscious of their of their wealth and their ability to have a a pleasant life.
Yeah.
It's sort of like it helps you reframe things a bit.
It's just great to see the entire community come together, like regardless of faith.
Yes.
During the times of Ramadan, because it's mostly like there are people that are hungry, so even if I don't fast, I'm not gonna eat in front of them out of respect.
Yes,
I want to come together to kind of like help them do their faith, or like I can cook a big meal and my neighbors can't, so I will invite them over for breakfast.
Right.
I have like a surplus of income. Then now's the time for me to share, or like I can like share whatever I have that I don't need with others around me.
Right. Yeah, and it's also just beautiful, right? Like the lights come up and the phonies go up and like music turns like has its own.
Roll out.
The musaharatis wake you up like way too early.
You know, the funny part about these things is that those guys are not regulated, the musaharatis. They're just people that go like, I'm going to do this year.
they're the guys that normally park your car. But they're like, no.
But because of that, sometimes in your neighborhood, you'll have like 7 musaharatis. And one guy would pass by, and then 10 minutes later, like, it's like a snooze button. You go like, I'm going to go back to sleep. And then another musaharat goes like, oh God, I'm never going to sleep.
Honestly, though, like sometimes I feel like I need some in the Netherlands, because when you sleep through your suhoor alarm,
yes,
it's not great. No. You wake up like 2.5 hours later, you're like, oh,
yes, exactly.
Oh no. Okay. Well, I guess it'll be it. Because in the Netherlands, the fast is like, 15, 16 hours long.
Yeah.
You kind of look at your clock and you're like, well, I guess I'll drink in 16 hours and you go back to sleep.
I'm also in the Northern Hemisphere, so I also in my childhood had those really, really short fasting days. And in the summers, we have the other extreme where we have a longer fasting day than in the Middle East. Because, we have more sunshine than that. So maybe not as extreme as the Netherlands, but we're not too far away.
Right. I can't wait. I'm just very excited. Last year, because of COVID, I did a lot of my Ramadan in Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
I would host iftar and suhoor in Animal Crossing and just get people from all over. You were there.
I was there. Yeah, I came to one of them. That was awesome. It was a lot of fun.
Super lovely. I mean, I'm still a little sad that games are not acknowledging Ramadan, but like I guess a lot of our cultures are used to sort of being ignored in global pop culture.
Sadly.
So
maybe we can do something about it.
How about we do something about it?
Exactly.
So over the past period of time, we've been planning a lot of Ramadan content. We kind of want to give you a heads up of what's going to be happening over the next few weeks. By the time this is live, Ramadan will be starting in a few days. And during Ramadan, we will have small bonus episodes for every suhoor that you might participate in. Mm-hmm. All of us have different plans for them. Yeah. All of us are very excited about them.
Yeah.
So for every morning, if you participate in Ramadan, there'll be a tiny little Habibis episode for you to listen to for your breakfast, or if you're not participating in Ramadan, just for during the day.
Yeah.
Besides that, we're also looking at just doing a bunch of extra stuff. We might be doing some live content as well.
Yes.
We're looking at lots of tournaments between us.
It's going to be exciting.
We may or may not have alluded to some of them on the podcast.
Right.
Yes.
So we're definitely looking at doing a bit more stuff also live. We'll try and figure out just to make things as fun as together as possible, to give that sense of community in the games industry that sadly keeps missing in a lot of the Western sphere of gaming. So I'm really excited.
Yeah,
it's been so much work, but it's so worth it, and I'm so happy that we get to do this.
Yes. Also, I just want to say there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Things for Arab and Muslim representation has been improving over the years. I feel we're at the cusp of it. So there's going to be one company that's going to take the plunge first, one of the bigger ones, and then all of the others are being like, oh, we should have been doing this years ago, and one by one they're going to fall into place.
Inshallah.
I feel it. Inshallah. I feel it. I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. But for now, we'll do it.
For now, it's on us.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Salam.
That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I am Fawzi Masmar, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at Fawzi Masmar. My fellow Habibis were Osama Dorias, who you can find on Twitter at Osama Dorias, and Rami Ismail, who you can find on Twitter at THA_Rami. Send us your questions, stories, and suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. Intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubayla, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to your favorite podcasting service, or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening. Salam.